Alright, so if you look up on table 2, you'll notice that we got 3-bet by Flotsam Fiend again. And this spot is almost identical to the hand towards the end of the first video, where I had really good kings in position versus 3-bet, and opted to call as sort of a trap to help strengthen my flop range as a caller in 3-bet pots. Basically to have better equity in a post-flop situation, as opposed to trying to get fold equity via a pre-flop 4-bet. That's sort of neutral in equity versus 3-betting range. And I prefer the first option mainly because we're in position. I guess also recall from that hand that we raised the flop over C-bet on a dryish board and he folded. I'm gonna do the same thing this time pre-flop with my mind focused on villain's very high C-bet percentage, and that I'm usually going to have the top of my range on the flop for hands that I open in the cutoff and call a 3-bet with, which is somewhat wide, but standardly wide, I guess. I don't think I'm too out of control or too tight with it. Alright, so I have some equities here. There's like 4 of them here. So the 2 on the top are showing like my range versus his 10% 3-bet, and also my actual hands versus his 10% 3-bet on this flop. And you'll notice like how my equity jumps a lot. And I showed the 35% versus the 10% basically because I wanted to show like whose range hit this flop more, and it's actually pretty close. I mean, he has some of an edge just because his range is a little bit stronger, but these kind of like middling kind of flops with a flush draw can hit both our ranges pretty well. And then on the bottom too, I showed our range versus aces and our actual hand versus aces, and we're not doing too bad in either spot. But notice how on the simulations on the right here, we have an edge versus his range and his actual, and not his actual hand, but like versus aces. I'm not sure like what he had in his hand, but yeah, it's just showing how, I mean, it kind of hit like a pretty big flop for our hands, but showing how it's just the value of kings in our 3-bet range, how it kind of helps us out in these spots. And he's going to C-bet, obviously, because he's C-betting 92%. And as far as sizing goes, he knows we're going to be committed anyway, so just going with full pot here with 100 big blind stacks to start the hand. Looking at his C-bet stats, is about the same in 3-bet pots, like 88%. And he bet folds again, and it's good to know what kind of boards people bet fold on. And I guess it's sort of obvious that he was going to bet his air on this board, given his C-betting frequency, like really high. But a lot of rigs don't C-bet on this kind of board without a piece, like they know it kind of hits our range pretty well. So that's definitely something to take a note on. Our next hand of focus is going to be on table 4. Flotsam Fiend is going to open from the button. And with our hand, we're definitely ahead of his 60% button steal. Plus our hand flops pretty well, and the hand's going to be easier for us to play out of position with the initiative and our lower SPR, etc. So I'm going to make sort of a standard 3-bet. But I see a lot of players flat this kind of hand in the blinds with normal stacks versus a button steal. And not that flatting is like god awful or anything, but 3-betting, I'm pretty sure is surely a better option right now and will help us later in the hand. Note that this is toward the bottom of our 3-betting range, like value-wise, and also how much better our hand ranks if it's double suited. Like on top here, it's single suited. And on the bottom, these numbers look a lot better, obviously. So pre-flop's going to get kind of weird in that Nezlita, a tighter player so far that I have no specific reads on, is going to, wait, there's something here, is going to flat our 3-bet, and Flotsam Fiend, as you saw, end up folding. So we're still going to the flop heads up, but the hand is much different now since we're up against a stronger, more defined range. And on the top simulation here, I showed Flotsam Fiend's range, how we're doing versus Flotsam Fiend. He's opening about 60% of his buttons and folding about 10%. So I gave him 54% without aces, and I just picked a tighter number for Nizlita, also excluding aces from his range. And as you can see, what was the potential equity advantage for us has turned into an equity disadvantage. So we need to proceed with a little bit of caution post-flop.